broadcast system. This is not a test. Repeat, this is not a test. Citizens are advised to take the following steps. If exposed, remove clothes. Emergency broadcast system.
Podcast for the curious mind. I don't know what that means.
Broadcasting live from a German-made microphone deep within. Well, I guess I'm not in the bunker. I'm in an undisclosed location right now. We have nice to be back, fellas. Mr. Optimistic, Mr. Sandbag. Look at these names. A little offended no one called me for Ginger Pride Month.
I didn't even know.
Wow.
When did that start? Like 2 days ago? Come on, let's calm down.
I think June's packed already. June's, I mean, you're gonna have to fit it in.
Isn't it like
time.
Pride Week? Like
Yeah.
actual Pride Week? Like soon too?
It's well,
Is that
I
why
think
it's Ginger Pride Month?
it's
Double Pride.
just double pride, double fist of pride. Happy Pride Month. We got we have unseen. Okay, calm down. Unseen. No sign language on this show.
Hey, I was just saying, touched, you know.
Due to anonymity, unseen, but only heard, we have our naval correspondent, Clemens, chosen to go by the name Clemens, joining our show today. Thank you so much for joining us, Clemens.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Guys, it's been a minute since we've had a show. How's everybody?
I know. It was nice. It was a nice little break. It's been kind of crazy. Graduation and all that shit.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then you've got kids going to play football in is it division? Is it like the lower tier division?
Jordan right now is going to go Division 3 to Cornell
Division
College
3.
there in Mount Vernon, Iowa, which is just north of Iowa City.
Ah!
But
Congratulations.
Yeah, he's trying out. He did that tryout for CU, and he's still waiting to hear back on that, whether that was go or not. And then that's the reason why he's in Nebraska as well, because they're actually the schools are starting to have camps for all grades because of the transfer portal.
Any preferred walk-on offers or anything for D1?
Yeah, could be at Nebraska for Jordan.
Yeah.
So let's see how his camp goes.
It'd probably be best just to avoid Nebraska if he wants to really consider football as a long
Tell
time.
him to hop on that train because we're coming.
All right. Guys, have you ever heard of Admiral Byrd?
Yes.
Okay. What do you know
I was
about
trying to remember though. Did he go to Antarctica or did he go to the Arctic?
And so Admiral Byrd went to both.
Okay, then.
He's one of the first explorers. Well, so there's some like debate on how he used his measurements to determine if he flew directly over the North Pole. There's arguments whether it's like 19 degrees he saw the sun or at 18 degrees he saw the sun.
Let's calm down. Like, you know what I'm saying?
But supposedly he's the first one to fly over the North Pole. And then he led 3 expeditions to Antarctica. Wow. And I'm talking like time frame 1926 to 1947.
So he's a hard man.
This guy, so
chisel.
Yes. Yeah, that's fair. I got his Wikipedia page pulled up here. Let me share it with you. He's like one of the most decorated to this day members of the Navy. And what's interesting about him is that he comes from like this long, like he's not just some like peasant boy that like joined the Navy and, you know, excelled. He was like comes from this long, what's it called when you come from like a heritage of governors and so forth? You know, it's like a political
lineage.
Yeah, he comes from a lineage of, so like before America was even, you know, its own country, like there were British governors of Virginia, and it was his like great grandpappy that was the governor of Virginia under the British crown. And then after the Revolutionary War, they're still like governors, like they're all like 4 generations of governors. And then comes Richard Byrd, and his one brother goes and becomes governor, and he himself joins the Navy. But the problem is when it comes to the Navy, like he's not like very physically fit. So like I don't know if physically fit's not fair to say. He's just like he keeps getting injured. Like like twists an ankle and sprains a body part and keeps getting these stupid injuries on the ship, and then he gets laid up, and so he's sort of useless. And so then they put him on this ship that let me pull it up here. I forget what the ship was actually called, but he gets put on this ship after so he originally wants to go to the University of Virginia, but then he has to go into the Naval Virginia Military Institute, and then he gets put on this ship. Let's see here, gunboat USS Dolphin. So this was the yacht that served the Secretary of the Navy. So that was his assignment.
Oh yes,
Mhm. And it brings him into contact with like high-ranking officials like Franklin Roosevelt, who was the Assistant Secretary of the Navy at the time. So he gets promoted to rank of lieutenant during this time serving on the USS Dolphin. And he sort of develops a name with himself among these high-tier political officers. And then, of course, Roosevelt becomes president during World War II. And his last assignment, Byrd's last assignment before he's forced to retire, is at the presidential yacht, the USS Mayflower. So I guess before Air Force One, they sort of had like Air Force boats, It's like the USS presidential yacht.
Oh, interesting.
Imagine if they if like Biden got on the presidential yacht, how upset people would be.
He might fall in the water though. At least he wouldn't bunk his head.
See him take that digger.
Yeah.
Fucking
First time we've seen the
Academy or
bottom of
whatever.
president's shoes.
Except for when, oh man, and he just points back at the rug that was tripped him.
What the hell was that? Why is there a sandbag in the? That's what they said. It was he tripped over a sandbag.
That fucker came out of nowhere. I do see this. He won the Medal of Honor for flying over the North Pole.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, I got to hear about the journey, I guess, to decide whether that's Medal of Honor worthy.
Well, so it's interesting because you can actually pull up videos on YouTube where they interview him, and he tells you exactly what he like experiences there. Pretty much what they did is they set up camps, and then they'd fly planes in like a radius. And this was for Antarctica. For North Pole, they like took off from a spot, and he said it was considerably warmer than what people thought the North Pole would be. It wasn't as cold as at all. He said, but the South Pole was extremely cold, and the average of the landmass there is like it starts at 6,000 feet in height above sea level, and then there's like huge. Oh, go ahead.
No, that makes sense because the Arctic is like more sea level. Like there's no real land there. That's why Antarctica sucks.
Well, and so what's interesting is like, he comes from this great political lineage. He gets in on this ship with high political figures that later become, Roosevelt becomes a 3-term president and, commanded during World War II. Admiral Byrd had done all this stuff during World War I for the U.S. Navy after he was couldn't really serve on a military level anymore, but he was brought on as like an advisor, and he was his opinion was very respected, I guess is what I'm saying. This guy has done a lot of stuff. The Germans hire him in 1926 to go explore Antarctica. And he uses a German plane, the Fokker.
Come on. Jokes write themselves. I'm going to take this little Fokker up there. Check it out.
You see that Fokker fly by? So anyway, he goes financed by the German government at the time, explores Antarctica. And then America has him go on an expedition to explore Antarctica. And then he has his family, and he has a couple of kids. I think he has I can't remember if he's got 2 boys or he's got a couple of children. But his oldest son comes with him. And this is the most interesting operation that takes place. It's the second last time to Antarctica. And World War II has just ended. And Truman asks Admiral Byrd to come out of retirement and lead an expedition force of 13 ships to Antarctica to do military training, to see how instruments work in cold weather, and to see if there's any like leftover Nazi bases in New Schwabenland, which is Antarctica. So Byrd, in his previous mission in the 30s to go to Antarctica, had created a little colony called Little America. And he goes and he wants to like really like build an actual worthy base for Americans to operate. And the concern that's given to the public is like, well, if the Panama Canal ever closes, we would have to have operating bases along the Antarctic to protect our ships for trade routes, right? Because you got to go all the way down South America and then come back up. And so he goes on this mission, and it's supposed to last a year and a half, and it lasts for 6 months. And he comes back, and I've got the interview of his Antarctica. Let me share my screen here.
Was it the one for deep freeze? Is that what it's called? Or
No, it was called Operation High Jump.
that's
What
right.
it was called. Yep, Operation High Jump.
Do you think Flat Earth Dave's on right now? He's like, "Fuck, Corey's gonna prove me right here."
Oh, you think this is a flat Earth thing?
Are you trying to get me on
interesting
it?
of you?
Huh?
What? No, I'm not trying to get you on flat Earth.
All right.
Just to be clear, check with the Navy correspondent. Do you believe in a flat Earth, Clemens?
Wow. Like,
No, that's too long of a pause.
That is a
I'll say
whopping
this.
yes.
like, no, I believe the Earth is round, but I say this knowing, like, from my perception, I have been around the world or traveled to the Arabian Gulf via the Pacific Ocean and Atlantic Ocean. So one would say I've been around the world or traveled around the world. But from my point of view, everything, of course, felt the same. It didn't feel like you were going around in circles. But then again, the Earth is pretty big. So to me, personally, the Earth is round. That's a short answer.
All right,
Thank you.
let's.
Thank you. Get off your soapbox and join the rest of us.
Yes. So this is footage from 1935.
Okay. Is that the Fokker right there? Oh.
I love the music.
Yeah. Like when they're actually showing this in the movie theater, so like people could get their news is like an Admiral Byrd jumping in his Fokker, flying over the North Pole. You know what I mean? Just that fucking old timey announcing. Super biased news.
Hey man, America swell.
I actually have like some old World War II documentary like stuff, and like in it there's like reels from when they played news in the theaters for the people, and there's one where it's like talking about how they ran the Japanese out of Alaska.
Yeah.
And it's like, and look below, a Japanese warship. This is rife with racism. It's awesome.
So you support racism?
Damn yellow bastards won't quit ya.
Yeah, really. Like that's how they were talking back there. They would show this at the movie theater. That's how you got your news, besides reading in the paper.
All right. So Admiral Byrd interview. So I want you guys to watch this one. I'll skip through the lolly parts. But this is the last interview I can find of Richard E. Byrd after Operation High Jump had taken place. So this is like early 50s that this interview takes place. And it's I want to get your guys' opinion on what you think he feels about his Antarctic expedition. It sucks because
A television journal of the important issues of the hour. See?
sponsors by.
Be sure you drink your Ovaltine. No, nothing. Are you waiting to hit unmute or something?
Can you not hear it?
No.
Oh no. My bad.
That's what you said. I love the music. I'm all, what music?
Oh, you can't. Let me change this then.
Technical difficulties, everybody. It's gonna be fine.
Technical difficulties here at Phantom Facts. They don't want us to know. They don't want us to know. That's what it is. Screen share. There we go. All right. Can you see that?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going full screen here. Let me know if you hear it.
There is.
There you go.
The
Right.
North Pole and the South Pole.
Here, let me
Is
start.
there any cross the North Pole and drink a cocktail at the same time? You know, only 3 score or more years ago, about 35 years ago,
Did you really have to go
our
scores?
guest
From
tonight
that?
I did. 3 score, baby.
3
found
scores.
out whether there was any land north
then he had to verify-
of the
I mean,
North American
35.
continent. He made that first discovery flight, and I must say that Admiral Byrd, our guest tonight, is not only our greatest living explorer, but he's been an inspiration to countless Americans. Admiral Byrd, you've been to both the North Pole and the South Pole. Is there any unexplored land left on this earth that might appeal to adventurous young Americans?
Yes, there is. And not up around the North Pole because it's getting crowded up there now because they find out it's really usable, not only to live in, but militarily. But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
This is a tremendous
So
challenge.
there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Yeah, did you say that as big as the U.S.?
I do.
It's bigger than the U.S.
Holy shit. I mean, I don't know how well traveled everybody else is, but I've been like all over the country and it's fucking huge.
Yeah, this is bigger. I mean, 15ers down the middle of it. 15,000-foot mountains.
Damn.
Wow.
Well, Admiral,
Yeah.
would you say that since you've been to both the extremities of Earth, are these expeditions to such far-off places, are they getting easier because of modern techniques, or is danger still close at hand?
Well, it's a little risky, but nothing like it used to be with the old slow planes and the small cruising radius where we had to put down bases. We replaced the dog teams, and of course that was a big improvement. But now the planes go much faster and they are safer and they have a much bigger cruising radius. You haven't got the danger of a terribly heavy load.
Admiral, an expedition to which I believe you're the advisor is now en route. What is that expedition doing?
Well, that's the icebreaker Atka, and it's a reconnaissance expedition. It's going down to the South Pole area to make certain observations and to look for some bases. They will be back in April, and they will report back, and upon the information we get from that undertaking, we will base the bigger expedition that's to follow.
Is that very definitely planned, or is that...
That is being planned right now. So I'm willing to say to you that there will be a number of expeditions that will follow, I think, year after year, at the bottom of the world, because the government has really become interested.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand, I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole because it's so near our greatest challenger. Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold. There's only one permanent resident. That's the emperor penguin. The little ones live further north. I tell you one reason they're interested. It's by far the most valuable, important place left in the world for science. That's why the scientific groups all over the nation are really interested. But more important than that, it has to do with the future of the nation, those to come after us, or even during your lifetime.
All those
Because
encyclopedias.
It happens to be an untouched
They're all
reservoir
fake.
of natural resources. And, as the world shrinks with an ever-increasing acceleration, far-flung places, once useless, like we thought the North Pole was, and no man's land, become very useful. The bottom of the world will be important, not only to us, but to our allies.
I was going to ask you, does it have military importance?
It has some, and as the world shrinks, it will continue to shrink with an ever-increasing acceleration, thus bringing these places closer. And in the future, I can see a time when it will be very, very important strategically.
Well, has the development of air power increased the strategic importance of places like the
very much
Palmer
so.
Peninsula, we'll say?
Very much so. Even now, if anything happened and we lost the Panama Canal, we would have to control the islands just north of Antarctica, which are part of Antarctica. Then between there and Cape Horn.
I've heard it said that there are 7 continents in the world, and one of them has never been seen by a woman, and that's Antarctica. Is that actually true?
Well, if the Palmer Peninsula is an island, as far as I know, that's true. No woman's ever stepped foot upon the Antarctic continent, and it's the most peaceful place in the world.
Well, I'm sure that won't last very long.
Good old
I understand that now that
1950s
you're
woman
working with
hate.
the Arnold Bread Company.
Get your ass back in
with
the
frozen
kitchen, girl.
foods now. Is there any future for frozen foods down these frozen extremities?
Well, I think the human race can be helped by that. This was thought out by Dean Arnold, who's, in my opinion, a great humanitarian.
Care about frozen
I
food.
avoided what you said about it.
Well, Admiral Byrd, are private expeditions a thing of the past? Or is it?
This part I thought was interesting.
As I
This
said,
question he asked them. He goes, "Are private expeditions things of the
it's the
past?"
most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long because of this intense interest on the part of other nations and this nation.
Well, Admiral Byrd, are private expeditions a thing of the past? Or is expedition and exploration, making expedition and exploration now purely a government function because of the tremendous
No, I
cost and
don't think
organization?
so. I think down south, it may be more or less a thing of the past, but not other expeditions that go. There's a lot of them go north now.
This latest expedition now on the way is a government expedition, I take it.
Yes, that's the government.
Admiral Byrd, may I ask you, is there a great difference between the top of the world and the bottom of the world?
There is.
Yeah, one's
Now,
on the top,
the North
one's on the
Pole
bottom.
is the center of an ocean
Fucking idiot.
10,000 feet deep. The South Pole, the center of a plateau, 10,000 feet high. The North Polar Sea is surrounded by continents that are slightly frozen. The Antarctic continent is surrounded by a belt of ice, frozen seas of at least 1,200 miles thick. Now, the South is a plateau. It gets, in some places, 14,000 feet up. I've been over areas about 13,000, and it's a little bit chilly up there. So there's that big difference between the top and bottom of the world. The North really isn't very cold up there on the Arctic Ocean.
Not compared to the South. Admiral Byrd, we often hear it said that our young Americans now aren't as hardy as their forefathers. Do you think that Americans do measure up to the standards, the physical standards and morale standards of the past?
Look, you can only see
I
us
don't
now,
believe
boys.
that. I think they do.
Well, what would you say was the most valuable factor on expedition? Is it morale?
This is interesting
or
too.
Physical courage, or is it sheer equipment?
Well, I've always thought that loyalty was by far the most important trait. The British told me that when I first went down in 28, that I couldn't possibly get through the winter night without a mutiny if I took more than 20 men. But to save science, I had to take 42 men. Then I took 56 the next time, and so on. So, and I did find that loyalty was the most important thing during the winter night when it's very hard on your nerves. I think that's trait.
Well, that's a very valuable characteristic at any time. Well, thank you very much, Admiral Byrd. It's been a great pleasure to have you here tonight.
It's a pleasure to be with you.
His Britannica salesman is just loaded.
Killed it.
For those kids that don't know, back in the day, there used to be people that would go around and sell encyclopedias, which is pretty much like the internet in book form. And your parents would buy it, and then that's what you do your homework out of.
And there was actual salesmen that would knock on your door.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a book that's A through B of like everything, and then you'd have to like research your papers that way. It really sucked.
Hey guys,
that's an AI bot.
That's the story of old Admiral Byrd. He died in 1957 on March 11th. He was the recipient of Medal of Honor, highest honor for valor given by the United States, and was a pioneering American aviator, polar explorer, and organizer of polar logistics. Yeah, just one hell of a guy. There is a little side note that happens after he dies, which I think is interesting.
I just want to.
Was it Transformers was written?
Just a sec. What did you say, Mike? Or Clemens?
Well, I just want to point out, like with that video, he talks about how there could be a military significance, but why, or some sort of strategic reason for being out there. So why would there be like a could be, but you're also actively out there looking for bases? So why would you assume that there's bases out there with no strategic value for them being there?
Interesting.
I think he was referencing like potential bases for future American bases.
Like setting up little colonies to protect interests.
Looking for like spots.
What's interesting is after after the Operation High Jump, they come back. I think it's like 8 months early from their mission. The Secretary of Navy, James Forrestal, goes crazy, is removed from the Truman cabinet, and then jumps off a psychiatric ward of a naval hospital to his death and kills himself. This was the guy that helped finance, or not help, but like help organize Operation High Jump. Just something interesting. Also, the Germans and the Ford Corporation with Henry Ford were the ones that financed the 1926 mission and the 1933 or 32 mission. And Admiral Byrd also received a Medal of Honor from the Third Reich for his services in that. So that's interesting too. And then after he dies, his son, who also becomes an admiral, finds a personal journal called The Secret Diary of Admiral Byrd. And in it, there is a slightly different explanation of what happens while he's down there in 1947. So what they would do is originally they had sled dogs, and they'd build a base, find a good place to like land their planes and to like refuel and stuff. And then the plane would scope around its radius, sort of, like a seaplane out in the ocean, but this over Antarctica. And then they'd find another spot, and then the sled dogs would go there. Well, with the introduction of equipment, they were able to go way further into Antarctica than they had been before in the 30s or in the 20s. And so his official secret diary that his son produces after he has passed away has his flight log on February 19th, 1947. Are you guys a little curious what it says?
Absolutely.
I've heard this story a little bit. Go for it.
Okay. All right. So he at
Aliens.
0730 hours. Say what?
Aliens, Transformers. That's got to be.
So at
There's a
0730
hole
hours.
in the ground.
Okay. He radio checks with base camp. All is well. Radio reception is normal. 0740 hours. Note slight oil leak in starboard engine. Oil pressure indicator seems normal, however. 0800 hours. Slight turbulence noted from easterly direction. Altitude of 2,321 feet. Correction to 1,700 feet. No further turbulence, but tailwind increases. Slight adjustment in throttle controls. Aircraft performing very well now. 0815 hours. Radio check with base camp. Situation normal. 0830 experiences more turbulence. Increases his altitude to 2,900 feet. Smooth flight conditions again. At 1910 hours, vast ice and snow below. Note coloration of yellowish nature and disperse in linear pattern. Altering course for better examination of this color pattern below. Note reddish or purple color also. Circle area 2 full turns and return to an assigned compass heading. Position check made again to base camp. Relay information concerning colorations in ice and snow below. At 1910, same time, his magnetic and gyro compasses begin to gyrate and wobble, and they are unable to hold heading by instrumentation. So he takes bearing with the sun compass. All seems well. Controls are seemingly slow to respond and have sluggish quality. Then what happens at, let's see here. At 10 o'clock, he crosses over a small mountain range and still proceeding northward as best as can be ascertained. Beyond the mountain range appears to be a valley with a small river or stream running through the center portion.
Not frozen?
There should be no green valley below, he states. Something is definitely wrong and abnormal. We should be over ice and snow. To the port side are great forests growing on mountain slopes. Our navigation instruments are still spinning. The gyroscope is oscillating back and forth. At 10:05, he adjusts his altitude to 1,400 feet, takes a sharp left turn. He sees green with moss or tight-knit grass. The light seems different. I cannot see the sun in this valley anymore. We make another left turn, and we spot what seems to be a large animal of some kind below us. Appears to be an elephant. No, it appears to be more like a mammoth. Then he goes on to talk about how he comes across countryside that is below, more level and normal. They spot what seems to be a city. The aircraft that he's flying becomes light and oddly buoyant. The controls refuse to respond. Then he sees what appears to be a dish-shaped flying UFO with a swastika,
on the side. Yes.
With a swastika on the side. And the radio
plane.
Get the fucker!
Run the fucker.
So now here's the thing. I'm reading this, right? And I'm just like, this sounds completely like made up. Like, I mean, I don't know. Like, he goes on to talk about that the aliens attach to his ship, lower it, drop it down onto a landing zone. And then Admiral Byrd is escorted to what is referred to as the Master. And the Master says how, they've chosen not to get involved with what's going on. But now what happened after the Hiroshima and Nagasaki atomic bombs, they have to start paying attention because humans are going to kill themselves because they've discovered uranium. And then he tells them to deliver this message to their leaders. And then Admiral Byrd is released back. And shortly after that time, the mission ends. And they send, what do you call that when you send, because the Navy travels in a pack, right? Like there's like
battle group.
They call it a fleet. Yeah.
A fleet, yeah. They send like a whole fleet down to Antarctica. And the entire fleet returns 8 months early. And, it's considered a success and no one really questions anything anymore. And then 2 years later, I think it's 13 countries all signed this pact, and then no one else is allowed on Antarctica.
Hell yeah.
And it's been that way since 1949.
So you're saying like the Navy went down there, saw what was going on, and was like, nope, and just turned around and went right back?
So what's odd is Admiral Byrd stops in Chile on his way back to refuel, I'm sure, for the mission back to America. And he talks to a Chilean newspaper, and he discusses how technology exists of aircraft that can travel from pole to pole with extreme speed.
I thought, didn't Putin want to break up this treaty or remove them from the? I could have swore a couple months ago that this was. I mean, this was all over social media, Twitter, about several countries wanting to leave that treaty for the Antarctica thing because they want to go and put more eyes on it now.
In 1988. His son, who was with him in 1947 for Operation High Jump, and also became a naval admiral, and released this journal, is heading to it's like a book signing about his dad, and he's the guest speaker to speak for his father, Richard Byrd. And he doesn't show up to the event. And he's found a few days later in an industrial section of the city, and he looks homeless. They thought he was some homeless, like vagrant that had died. And but he wasn't. He was Admiral Byrd's son. And the belief is among the conspiracy theorists is he was going to tell the truth that night of what him and his father actually saw in 1947 on their trip to Antarctica.
Did he have a question? Did the son, was he married and have children or anything?
I don't know. Good. I don't know. It's a good question.
I mean, it could be like just one of those weird dudes, you know.
But what military strategic value would Germany have to have bases in Antarctica? Like, geographically speaking, they're so far apart, and we're taught that like Hitler's agenda was to push his agenda all over the world, right? So why would you have bases set up in a place that nobody else is, and that's not really accessible?
Is this like a moment of when America was founded and countries were just like, hey, I landed in this port called Louisiana, or in New Orleans, and so now all of Middle America belongs to the French? That what was like Germany was trying to do? Like they're like, hey, we technically have a base here, so all of it is ours. There's a lot of weird beliefs.
My thing is, if they got a UFO though, right? Or not a UFO, but the flying saucer deal, and they're that dominant in the airspace, like why'd they lose? You know what I'm saying?
Well, what happens if it's let's see,
he's also
there's
talking
supposed
about loyalty too.
That's yes. In that was very odd to me too. What's the most important thing? Now, this was on CBS, which is I feel the arm of the CIA. So like, is that him talking to his masters like, hey, I'm loyal. I'm not James Forrester.
Right. And think about how they look at the UAP and UFO thing now, and how and you think of that in comparison to loyalty, like, hey, don't talk, don't say anything. So very interesting.
Well, a lot of his documents were seized at his death too. I don't know. I think there's a lot of weird, there's a lot of weirdness behind it, because you could say let's say the Germans find this, so what they're talking about is pretty much a livable world on the other side of the mountain ranges of Antarctica, where another civilization has been unimpeded. Or
was that where the flat earthers get that the Antarctica is surrounding us, and if you cross the wall, So Byrd actually was able to cross the wall and see
That's
the other side.
so that's the argument the flat earthers use. There's also another conspiracy theory called the hole in the earth, which is that there's divots on each side of the poles, but that Byrd was not a flat earther, and Byrd was not a hole in the earth guy.
Right.
If that's what Byrd what Byrd saw supposedly is that he crossed over the mountain ranges and found a livable green valley with large mammals, and then he was captured by a UFO, told not to pass on the message to the other nations.
Like, don't fuck with us.
Yeah, and so now, and it's hard to verify a lot of this. So there's like reports that these alien ships came up to the fleet and started firing on them, but none of that's in Admiral Byrd's journal. Those are just like spin-off conspiracy theories.
I was gonna say 13 warships and no one's talking about it. Like, that's a lot of dudes. You know what I'm saying?
And I watched interview with the last living member that went on Operation High Jump. He's like 102, and like he was, he loved the experience. He brought back all these photos of them in the ice and stuff. A lot of those guys were just there to build bases. Byrd's mission was to fly in the plane with his co-pilot and go and, actually see how far you could go into it.
Yeah. I was going to say, maybe they returned early too, because you know what they found? Fucking ice and snow and mountains. That's it.
Or
They're like, it's the
Transformers.
same shit. We
Well,
found some emperor penguins.
That's not what he said, though. I mean, they said like a whole, and I think I passed through it, but he said there's a whole mountain range of just coal.
Oh, damn.
Just like straight up coal that he said could supply the world for several years. So like it wasn't like they were just on ice, like they were exploring the resources. He said there was high amounts of uranium stored in Antarctica.
I'm sure that's the main reason. That's the whole reason why we expanded across America, is for resources.
Yeah, it's a conspiracy thought.
Oh, look, there's a bunch of people with pointy sticks. Let's take all their shit.
Yes.
Just because we know how to use it better.
Look, these assholes are dancing around a fire.
Well, this is not the first time a Secretary of Defense or an admiral or people have talked about alien spacecraft. I don't think it's talked about before 1947, is it?
No, because, what was it? July in 47 is when Roswell didn't happen.
Ooh, you got to listen to that podcast, sir, bud.
You know what? I saw an interview, and I'm starting to doubt your Roswell.
Oh, fuck.
I'm starting to doubt it.
Why? Because some asshole remembering shit that's 20 years.
No.
Encapsulated in 2 days.
It was fascinating. It was a coroner for Roswell. He owned a cemetery or a funeral home. Oh, what are those cookies?
Fucking warm cookie too. Thanks, Mo.
No, it was so he ran a funeral home in Roswell, and he worked with the Air Force Base on preparing bodies when weird stuff would happen, and he gets a call from the Air Force Base, and they ask him like if they wanted to ship a body without like having tissue decay, what would they need to do? And he said, I could come over there and help you figure out. And they're like, no. This is for future use. Like if something in the future was to ever happen and we wanted to like preserve the body so it can be, studied at a different location, what we'd have to do. And he goes, well, the best thing I can think of is dry ice. And he's like, do you know where I can get dry ice? And he goes, I would check, Nyberg's or Lewis, or I forget what
grocery store. How far away do you live? You need some dry ice for your milk?
Well, this be the late 40s. Roswell happens.
Guy goes in the grocery store. I need 50 pounds of dry ice, please, real quickly. No questions asked.
All right. So anyway, he is. God damn it. He's no question. You take these.
Go ahead. Continue.
He so anyway, all this stuff happens, and I forget. It's a fascinating interview because he's sort of got the hots for an Air Force nurse there, and they like hang out and have coffee and been hanging out for a couple of months, and he ends up getting called to the Air Force base to deliver some caskets that are infant caskets, like 3 foot tall.
No.
And so he delivers them, and he sees her, and she's just sort of like, it's like a bunch of stuff going on. So she just, waves at him and says, "I don't think you should be here." And then a guard comes and says, "You need to leave." So he leaves, and the next day he calls up this little lady friend of his and is like, "Hey, we should get lunch." And so they go to the officers club, and they have lunch, and he said they talked for an hour and a half, and she explained like no finger, the arms were as thin as his thumb, and the fingers had no nails on them, and it smelled like sulfur, and like they had to evacuate the whole wing because people were starting to complain of the smell, and they're like no nose, but 2 holes, and the eyes were weird, and da 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 da. And he said he was very freaked out. And so he leaves, and he goes, the next day she's transferred to a different location, and he's, she gives
Never
him
saw her again, right?
she dies in a plane crash in London, like 3 months later. And so yeah, he never saw her again. And she gave him his like ID because he wanted to write each other, and he would write her and it would come back, like doesn't exist or something like that. And so then he found out that her plane had gone down over London in a training exercise or whatever. They're transferring them somewhere.
Where'd you see that? I need to see this now.
It was fascinating because
It's on
like
the CW. You can watch it. I've seen the show.
no, it's the I don't know. It was interesting because like he said he had never told anyone but his father, and they had received a little harassment by the sheriff's department in Roswell, and his father had told, because he knew the sheriff, to pretty much fuck off, and then it wasn't discussed about until he discussed it in this interview. I'll put it in the show notes. I thought it was interesting, but I don't know, man.
I don't believe that at all.
It's a lot of weird alien stories.
You don't believe it.
I did too much research on Roswell and fucking debunked almost all of it. Damn near.
You didn't tackle that interview.
That's what they were going for. I didn't even know about it.
Well, then you did do that much. No.
When did that just come out? That guy's old too.
It was like 90s. It's in the 90s, but I just seen it on YouTube.
We talked about it. They did a whole investigation. Like legit congressional,
sounds
went
like
after
they had
it.
an alien.
Yeah, but this is an actual person that was that's a good point. Not very optimistic of you. That's fair. So you just said you don't think Admiral Byrd saw aliens then?
He 100% did.
No.
Probably saw Shia LaBeouf and Megan Fox down there and was like.
So you think it's just some random? You think it's just all randomly explained coincidences, and that his son faked the journal for.
Here's probably why I have such a mistrust, when it comes to personal people's stories. My brother, which man,
here we go.
Have you met fucking JD?
Family time.
I've seen pictures. Go ahead.
He's my brother, and I guess I can say I love him. But
I guess you could say that.
He's the smallest
motherfuckers got stories that even you would roll your eyes. You'd be like, you couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? And he tells them with such sincere, he's really honest, and he's told the story so many times that he actually I think believes it, and so like he doesn't really give those trace hints that he's lying when he's talking about it because he believes it went down because he's told the story so many times. My kids all are like, oh my god, don't leave me in a room. He's gonna.
Uh-huh.
And
Does
he is
your
just
brother
one
have
person of 7 billion.
Does
You
he
know,
have the
there's
same-
definitely more people just fucking like him.
Does your brother have the same credentials as Admiral Byrd though? Like, I mean, isn't like your
He never
brother's
said it. It's a motherfucker saying that he said it. You know what I'm saying? That's like third party story level. Like that's like the liar's liar.
First of all, I've never met
Like-
your brother, so I don't want to assume he's a filthy liar. But let's just go off of the premise that he is known for being a filthy liar.
Oh, dang it. He told my dad that he was immune to AIDS and that the government was researching him so they could find a cure. Legit said it with a straight face to my
Why
phone.
don't we have your brother on our show? Like, can you imagine your brother that in that one? Who did we have on that believed AIDS was fake?
Ooh, did
Remember
we?
him? Mike, was it? I can't remember his name. God damn it! Remember that guy? Said all the viruses weren't real.
Oh, yes. And it was like so far out there. I'm like, I can't engage with this person.
I can't.
JD,
Well-
if you're listening, send us a text.
Yeah.
Convince me.
Yes,
I can tell you some other stories that he's told.
Okay,
you're
but
just like, wow.
So you're talking about your filthy, lying, backstabbing brother.
What backstabbing now?
I use your
Not
words, not
backstabbing.
mine.
Just shitting all over
But
JD.
it's just no. My point is that like he can
So
tell a
Admiral
story
Byrd is the same
with
level.
detail. You're saying it's coming from Byrd.
Yeah,
It's a journal that is allegedly his that his
Yeah.
son gave. It'd be different if fucking Byrd was up there doing it.
his son was on that journey.
It's not just Admiral Byrd though. Like it's the Third Reich. It's the German army. Like like he said publicly that's where they were going, and the whole reason why they were traveling to Antarctica was to try to find bases. So Germany was already there. Like
New Schwabenland.
I don't believe it.
Well, that's not in debate. The Nazis had bases in Antarctica.
Yes.
So like,
Maybe that's what he was looking for. I don't know.
I don't know. What do you think, May? Aliens? You think
100%.
You think it? See,
Aliens.
I'm too hard to please, I guess.
Well, I just don't understand. Like, I mean, Admiral Byrd's son, who's also a naval admiral, gets suicided out in the, back in the 80s when that was still very much a thing with our beloved CIA. Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know. It makes.
And he became an admiral, tripping and falling his way into it, like via what I feel like is privilege, only for his son to be a homeless guy.
Well, his son wasn't homeless. His son was an admiral, but they found him 4 days after he was supposed to appear to give a speech about his father, and they thought it was a dead homeless guy. And then when they actually looked at who it was, it turned out to be Admiral Byrd. So his son became an admiral, and I think
So
you're
his
right.
son was Richard Byrd III.
Yes, yeah.
Dick Bird the Third.
Fuck.
That show
sounds-
title? Is that
Yes,
show
it's
title
gotta
right
be.
there?
Well, that's his son though. It's not actually, but Dick Bird in itself is fucking hilarious.
See, that's what I think is what
Stop
sort
being
of,
a Dick Bird and get in your fucking. Get out
it's,
of here.
it's sort of cements it though, right? Like that
Everything-
death makes no sense.
He was found in a warehouse in Baltimore, Maryland. He had gone missing on September 13th after being placed on a train in Boston bound for Washington, D.C. What do you mean being placed? His cause of death was said to have been dehydration and malnutrition, which resulted from Alzheimer's.
Now, reports from his family said he wasn't.
No, I believe that. This is, come on, this is Wikipedia. Anybody can put this shit in here. You know what I mean? Good old cover story. stuff.
No, that's the official story. Is that it was an Alzheimer's? That's right. It was an Alzheimer's thing, and they found him, and he was starved and pen
That's
during.
pretty
fall.
young for Alzheimer's, isn't it?
Well, and his family said he had shown not any real signs of like, advanced Alzheimer's.
Usually that's like back then though, like even with my great grandma, like when she had it, it was like she was totally fine, and then all of a sudden she's lost in town. You know what I mean? It was just quick.
I think the aliens did the Alzheimer. You know, they were like, we got to tie up these loose ends.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's not the U.S. government. The aliens were the ones that assassinated Admiral Byrd's son.
Yeah.
I think someone killed him.
Good thing.
I think someone killed him. I don't think the guy just wandered off and then died after 4 days.
So a place with so much scientific like research and things, why haven't we been back there? Like, I know there's been like voyages.
There's a treaties in place, isn't it?
There's a science base there.
So I think it'd be cool if we could talk to Brett Olson again about this subject, because
he's been there.
And he probably will cringe at hearing my take on Admiral Byrd, because I'm sure I missed a lot of stuff. But I thought it was,
It'd be a good one to have on too. And
yeah, because I'd be curious to hear
how much he hates Flat Earth Dave too. It's fucking great. I missed that one. That was you and May with just him on that one.
I didn't see you missing. Adjusted your.
Oh, yeah.
All right, guys. Good show. That's the story of Admiral Byrd. Any like crazy news topics you guys want to hit on before we sign off?
Oh man,
bothering you want to rant about? I'm going to say one thing. Firm believer in voting in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. for president.
You're already campaigning?
Campaigning already, starting early.
Wow.
Have you guys done any research on him?
No.
I mean, if you research him and you like him, then the libertarians are definitely going to go for him. I already talked to a couple Zoomers to see what their take was on, and they're all for bringing back the 60s. You know what I'm saying?
Hey man, like I would tell you, like just how I am. Like JFK would have been my dog. Like he's awesome.
Well, and that's the thing. Like he sort of reminds you of a little bit of a JFK. I don't know if he's sleeping with Angelina Jolie, or I guess I don't know. Would that be the equivalent of Marilyn Monroe?
Could you imagine if we had a president like that though, banging the Kardashians?
It would be like
or
Instagram
just
models,
and then just like moves on to Jessica Simpson. Then he moves on to like just the typical J-Lo, just makes his rounds.
J-Lo for the rebound.
Yeah. Fucking what's her face? Rachel from Friends. God damn it. Jennifer Aniston. Hey, you want to see the picture? You want to see the Lincoln bedroom? Let's check it
out. Anyway, I'm all excited about that. He had an interview with Elon Musk on Twitter yesterday. I don't know if you've been paying attention to politics at all. It's starting to heat up. This is the time of the year.
No.
Into primary time. We got the commercials coming. We got Biden versus Kennedy. We got Trump versus DeSantis.
You didn't see my Facebook post today, did you?
What'd you say?
I pretty much said, you shouldn't worry about the macro. You should worry more about
the
micro.
Yes, I did see that.
And you're doing all macro right now.
It's because I get excited because it's more of like watching football. Like I'm never going to play football, but I can still enjoy watching the game being
If it
played.
makes you happy, go for it. But if it's making you miserable, you might want to take a timeout. You know what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, if you're so caught up in politics, it ruins your life and you begin to hate people over it. That's
right. You got to like look in,
But I mean, I love the political strategy of Kennedy going after Biden because I think Republican vote will be split in half.
And we're gonna get.
Where was Kennedy when Biden ran?
He didn't want to compete against Trump alone.
Really?
Yeah, I don't think you would have won that vote. It was too worked up. There's too much hatred between Democrats and Republicans.
So we're gonna have
You're
gonna have a fucking.
So what? You want Kennedy to beat
Kennedy's
Biden?
Doing a Democrat? Is that what he is?
Yeah. Kennedy's a Democrat. Yeah. So I think if Kennedy can drum up enough I don't know what the word I am looking for, but if you can drum up enough FaceTime, like through Twitter interviews with Elon Musk, that's a huge
I see what
one.
you're saying.
Fox
Right,
is covering, starting to Fox is
Exposure.
starting to cover him. Exposure. Thank you. If you can drum up his exposure early, so that the problem is Biden isn't obligated to debate Kennedy because he's incumbent.
I don't see how people can actually willfully vote for that dude. He's senile,
But
legit senile.
He doesn't have to debate politically because the unwritten rules are the incumbent doesn't have to fight for the position he already owns.
If he had to talk for a minute straight, he can't.
Well, it just depends on which actor they put in Biden's place.
Oh, you're one of those?
You just got to find which they all line him up and they're like, okay, 2B, he looks like he's ready to go. Let's put him into action.
Did you hear the joke about Saddam Hussein's body doubles?
No.
Yeah, so when they were bombing Saddam Hussein's temple, the security guard came in and said, "Good news, guys. Saddam isn't dead, but he did lose a hand." Get it? Because they'd have to chop off all their hands.
Yeah.
So, sorry, this fell a little dry out. All right. I thought it was funny. No, if he drums up enough exposure, it would put pressure on Biden to force to debate Kennedy, and if he can get that, I think he can win the Democratic primary.
It'll be like the first time ever, wouldn't it? Has that ever happened before? Where a president lost his own nomination?
But I think the name Kennedy carries a little weight to it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep.
You ever see that fucking?
You just gotta ask Junior. He's still alive. Just see what he thinks.
Have you ever seen that movie with? Fuck.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Have you ever seen that movie with? I want to say it's Eddie Murphy, where he changes his name to sound like the candidate before him, just so he can get elected. Just people just vote off names, and he ends up getting to go. I'm pretty sure it's Eddie Murphy. It could be Chris Rock.
I think it's Chris Rock. I think.
Oh, is it like the first black president type of movie? I think I know what movie you're talking about.
He was just. I don't think he was a president.
No, he did that one movie where he was president, wasn't he? Chris Rock did. It was right before Obama got elected.
Head of state.
I don't know if I've ever seen that one.
Yeah, it's pretty funny if I remember correctly. It's been many years since I've seen that. Well, I think Trump and DeSantis are just going to tear each other apart, and you're going to have a divided Republican vote. And if Kennedy doesn't win it, you're going to have 4 more years of Biden.
I don't see how it's possible. He ain't making another vote.
I didn't see how it was possible the first time.
I'm surprised he hadn't died yet. I just meant of age, something. He is not well. One bad fall, he's one hip away from freaking kicking it.
Cross your fingers.
No, you do not want that bitch as president.
Kamala?
I know.
All she would do is laugh. Oh my god, that would be horrific.
And then I don't know if you guys have been paying attention to Ukraine, but they're astonished that they've been receiving bombs in Kyiv.
Who's astonished?
Ukrainians. So they fly a bunch of drones over Moscow and drop the equivalent of Molotov cocktails. And so Russia turns back and just barrages Kyiv with missile fire. And they're all like, "Oh, I can't believe they would fire on Kiev."
Oh, wow.
So, I don't know.
All right, I found it. It's called the Distinguished Gentleman, and it is Eddie Murphy.
Oh. I'll check it out. Movie reference. All right, guys. Anything else you want to talk about? I had to get the Robert F. Kennedy thing out there because I'm excited about that.
I got football camps, basketball camps the next fucking month, so some of these days will be hit and miss for the show.
You look beaten down.
I haven't had a day off in a minute. I got up at 1:30 this morning.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. Clemens, thanks for coming on the show too.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
I don't think you remained very in the middle of Aliens. You notice how he sort of escaped?
You gotta come
all
out.
of that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Oh, my official answer, yes. I believe Roswell happened, and I do believe in aliens.
Oh, snap! All right.
Hell yeah.
3-1 now, right?
Hell yeah.
You listen to that podcast that we did on Roswell.
All right, guys. Have a good evening.